Alright, we got our new part from J.A. Pan. Yay! Compared it to the old one, and it looks the same. Let's get it plugged in here. Alright, relay's back in.
Yeah.
Battery's hooked up. We're in neutral. Brake on. Kill switch ready to go. Nothing yet. Alright, let's get our power probe hooked back up here and see what we're getting for voltages. Okay, we're still got 12.5 volts on the battery. 8.6 there. Now when we press this button in, it goes to 11 point. It does go up to battery voltage when we hit the button. So now, why isn't it closing this relay? Alright, before we get carried away here, let's look at a wiring diagram. So we're looking at the starter relay. And I'm looking at this LG is light green, and it goes to the gear position switch. And to me, for that relay to close, that switch has to be on a ground. Because if we're feeding it battery positive from the switch up in the handlebar, for that to travel and make a circuit, this has to be ground. That's the only two control wires there is. You can't put a positive and close that relay. It doesn't work that way. It's got that the electron's got to travel from a positive to a negative, right? That's how electricity works. So are we getting ground? We're in neutral right now. We're not getting ground on the light green. We're getting 8.7 volts. And no matter, oh, I bumped you. No matter where I go on the shifter, it's staying. So to test this, let's follow this light green wire that probably goes down into the bike. Let's see if there's a connection somewhere we can take off, and then we can ground it with this guy and see if that allows us to close this relay. Because if that's the case, then there's something wrong with our gear position sensor. Well, it didn't take long to find another green wire that's coming down into the bike, and there's a connection right here. And so I think this is our gear position sensor wire. Let's get that connection apart and see what voltage we have there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to force this wire to ground. Let's get a good connection on it. 8.7 volts, can you see that? Holding that down green means I got it grounded. Let's hit the starter. And it runs. And the reason it sounds like it's blowing a bubble bath is that our exhaust is off. But anyways, why? So, two things. Either the computer up here is feeding voltage into this that it shouldn't, and there's something wrong with this, or this should show ground. Unless, do I not have it in neutral? Do I? Okay, that's clearly neutral. This should be ground. It's not. Is it? It's probably broken. Okay, if you're still following me, I wonder if this wire is broke further down, because Yeah, let's go after this guy. So let's take off this chain guard here and see what we can see. These just look like a bunch of 8mm bolts. Bunch of junk in there. Bracket. Well, there's the wire feeds down to. That's our gear position switch, and I think it's sitting high enough on this motor that we can get to it without spilling oil, I think. And hopefully we can get it off without having to take the chain off. Yeah, we can. Okay, so we got our gear position sensor off, and if you see, there's a piece here, and that correlates to that stud right there. And when you shift, I'll shift it for you. See how that rotates? That's first gear, second gear, third gear. So that's neutral there, and that corresponds to this position on the sensor. Let's take this part over to the bench and see if we can get continuity from this over to the plug end. Honestly, instead of going to the bench, we can test it right here because our power probe has a ground wire on it. It's just going to be a finagled mess here. Alright, can you see everything? I'm going to put my power probe on that switch connector, and it does work. I think there is some corrosion on there. We can clean that up. Yeah, see, that was all gummy. That corrosion on there might have been our issue. See how that's getting shinier now? We can clean. I'll clean this up with sandpaper, and I'll clean that stud up that's inside the motor. Here's the stud as well. You can see there is a clear part, but there is crud on the other side of that. That was probably stopping our sensor from putting a ground, making our relay work. Probably hit that up with some sandpaper too. Okay, that stud is clean. We can put that back in there. It's got an O-ring, so we don't have to replace any gaskets on there. Make sure this guy is relatively clean. Put him back in there. Alright, let's see if we got a ground now. Ta-da! We have a ground. Unbelievable. Get that connector back on. What do you think? You gonna start? Hooray! We got it to run. We don't want it to run too long because it doesn't have an exhaust on it. Get this guy button back on there. That bracket that fell off sits like so. Alright, well, if we're going back to our list, our exhaust is on the way. Let's check out the carb leak. I don't see any wetness on the carb, but I do see some on the fuel shutoff here. Usually there's a gasket that goes on the back of that faceplate, but first, so I don't see anything actively leaking right now. That's because there's no gas in her. Let's put some gas in it and see if we can find some leaks anyway. Okay, well, I can see a drop forming right there on the fuel shut off. So I wonder if this, where this connects up to the gas tank, isn't as tight anymore. Let's try to tighten up those bolts, see if that stops that from leaking. Alright, what are those? Well, they're not 10 mil. 8. A little bit out of that. Remember, we're just screwing into the plastic. That's a plastic gas tank. There. That's a quarter turn. I need to swipe the gas off and see if that stops it. Well, that sure is an easy fix. I'll keep an eye on it. If it keeps leaking, then we'll go farther, but if it stopped leaking, we're good to go. Well, going back to our fuel leak, you can see that tightening up those bolts didn't do it, and I don't want to do it anymore in fear of breaking that. There is a gasket between the shutoff and the tank. We're gonna have to get one of those coming. Let's drain the fuel. All right, we're on the other side of the bike. To drain this fuel, we're just going to take the fuel line off of where it feeds into the carb. There's a little clip here that holds the spark plug wire to the fuel line. Here we go. Put that back on. Put our clamp back on. Okay, now we're back over to the side with the fuel shut off. Just gonna take these bolts out. We should have switched it to reserve. So remember that when you're draining your tank, make sure you switch that selector to reserve to get everything out of the bottom. Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with the same issue I have right now where there's still fuel in the tank. There's the bottom of it. You can see quite a bit of corrosion on there, like gunk. But our screens look pretty clean, so that's nice.
What
the O-ring that we're after there. See all the gunk on it. Let's get this all cleaned up and get our new O-ring. Alright, so we cleaned up the gunk on your shut-off valve and on the bottom of the tank up here. We got our new gasket. Let's feed that on and press that into place. Make sure that stands proud, which it does. And then we can feed it back up into the tank. Remember, we're just screwing into brass inserts that are in the tank, so don't go too bananas. Let's clean that all back up and get some gas in there, see if it holds.